Dr. Thomas Otter, how are you?
Hey, not too bad, Jason. It's good to be talking to you. It's a Sunday. Gosh, we're doing this on a Sunday. We are.
It is a Sunday, but when people listen to it, who knows when it's going to be? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's never a bad day to have time with you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's kind of you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited for our conversation today. As usual, when you and I talk, I never know where it's going to go. I never know exactly what we're going to get into.
Uh-huh.
But I know that from space of authority, as much as you can be that today, you're one of the leaders when it comes to putting your mind out there, your voice out there, and your brain out there when it comes to where the world of technology is going and where the world of work's going. So maybe we could start with just a quick intro of yourself and
Sure.
your background and how you've gone from a builder in one sense to a new kind of builder when it comes to helping organizations or helping founders, I should say, really get started on their journey.
Yeah. So I'm a venture capitalist. That's what I do nowadays.
Do you actually admit that label these days? You
Yeah,
actually go,
I do. I'm a venture capitalist during the week and I'm a venture socialist at the weekend. So how's that? Yeah. Yeah. So, um, yeah. So seriously though, I'm a venture capitalist and I'm a general partner in a VC fund called Acadian Ventures. And we're on our second fund. We're starting our next fund. And what we do, and we invest in early stage companies that are building the future of work. That's what we do. So that's my day job. And so I look for smart founders that have great ideas, that have the drive and the ambition to build the next great software companies. And that's what my partner, that's Jason Corsello, and I do every day. So how did I get there? It's a bit of a long and windy road. A lot of people who work in venture capital, they have a finance background, they go to Wharton or wherever, and they do Stanford or Wharton or whatever, and they do finance, and then they end up in VC. I kind of came a long way around to it. I actually said to Jason is that, yeah, I've worked in HR tech for all my career. I started in South Africa with SAP in the 90s, moved to Germany, spent most of my time in pre-sales and consulting and sales strategy and so on. Then I went to Gartner, where I worked with your good friend Jim Holenchek on the Magic Quadrants and advising literally thousands of companies and vendors on HR strategy. And then I was dragged back quite willingly, actually, to SAP SuccessFactors soon after the acquisition, and I helped build up Employee Central, and then ultimately lead the product strategy or product management at SuccessFactors for a number of years. I left there, and then I went back to university. Um, and then I did a fair bit of strategy advisory for a whole bunch of software companies, got more and more interested in the finance side of things and realized together with Jason that there was an opportunity to not only advise in this space, but to combine advice with leveraging capital. Um,
yeah.
so, with when you actually invest money in something, you actually put some weight behind it. And so, that's what we, did.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating story. And when people say they're a venture capitalist, it opens up so many avenues of questioning. And then your background and your history also tied to that makes it really fascinating. And you guys just had a huge honor, right? I mean, you were recognized as one of the leading or fastest growing funds out there.
Yeah, yeah. So Time Magazine did an analysis of the venture industry, and yeah, we got recognized, which is super cool because we're really a small, very small firm. So it's really based on the actual performance of the firm rather than the size of the fund and so on. So that's really nice. But I mean, our success isn't really down to us. It's down to the companies we've invested in. So
Yeah, but you have to be so proud. I mean, to go from from where what it is, which started very, very small to something that's growing to getting that recognition is
yeah,
huge.
it's super. We're very pleased to get that.
I know you're a humble guy, so
No,
it's hard to
I'm
get
not a
you.
humble guy. I'm not humble. I am as far from humble as you can possibly be. I'm an arrogant dude. But yeah, I'll take the kudos. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's an interesting time to be in the space because we're in interesting times in our world, and it's a fun and challenging time to be investing as well because we might be at the start of something new. So that's why that's
Yeah,
fun.
and I think that one of the things that's really interesting, Thomas, is that, like, you're not a quiet venture capitalist per se when it comes to your thoughts on the industry, which I love. There's the venture capitalist side of you, and I don't think this falls under the venture socialist side of you. But then
Yeah.
there's also the industry pundit side of you. And,
Yeah.
we'll make sure in the show notes we put all of your different sources. But you do a lot of writing and a lot of back and forth on the LinkedIn's and Substacks and things like that, which it seems to me that you enjoy that.
I do good fun. And so, when you worked, I think when you worked as an analyst for a while, it, it's a sort of occupational hazard that you have opinions, right? So, I used to be, I used to be paid money to have an opinion. So, now, it's quite. I mean, I gave a drink here about 15 years ago, but my wife once said you should never ever do a wine, you should never do a course about wine because you'll be completely insufferable because you'll have an opinion on, you'll have an opinion, you will sprout that opinion. So I feel like I've got the right to have an opinion on work tech. I feel like I've been in it long enough that I don't need anyone's permission to say what I think about vendor A or vendor B or vendor C. And, the thing is now that I, I don't really have of course, my interest is to big up the companies that we've invested in. So, I do that every
I
now
thought
and
you were
again.
about to say you don't have a horse in the race.
Well, I do in the sense of the companies that we've invested in. So that's of course, but that's pretty transparent because you can go to our
Right.
website and you can see who we're backing. So I don't have an agenda. I don't have some nefarious agenda underneath or whatever. It's just what I think, and yeah, I'm open about my biases and so on.
So speaking of wine, it's an interesting segue. We had a couple different, two or three, I'll call them quasi large acquisitions in our space over the last two
Yeah,
or 3 months.
yeah,
And, it's kind of good that it's been over 2 or 3 months because we've kind of let them age like a fine wine to discuss them now. And people are asking, actually, what's really interesting is that people aren't asking me about the acquisitions. They're asking me more about the state of the industry than
right,
they're asking about those specific acquisitions.
yeah,
And, you and I got into a little bit of a banter about, you know, are these a big deal for the industry? Are they not a big deal for the industry? Does this signal a reset? So maybe we could just start a little conversation about that because I think that there's so many people wondering, is my tech stack dying? Are all of these companies that are, I'll call them, I mean, I guess those would be unicorns, right? Or close to unicorns. Um, are all these unicorns going to get acquired by the big guys again? Like what's happened in the past, and are we starting that cycle? So maybe we can just riff on that for a few minutes.
sure, sure. I mean, so big companies, like companies like SAP, Workday, Cisco, and Google, and these companies generate cash. So from a financial perspective, when you generate cash, there's a couple of things you can do with it. You can put it in the bank, right? You can invest it through your treasury systems. You can make internal R&D investments. You can give it back to your shareholders either through share buyback, or through dividends, right? Or you can buy stuff. And when you buy stuff, there are two. I'm going to go financial for a moment, even though I'm not a finance person. But there's two types of acquisitions basically. There's what I call a balance sheet acquisition, and there's an income statement acquisition.
Interesting.
So when you do a balance sheet acquisition, you're essentially buying an asset.
And that asset could be a product, it could be customer base, it could be talent, right?
No, it's an asset, right? Rather
Okay.
than, right. So I'm buying a thing, right? So I'm adding something to my stack, to my business that I hope in the future will generate revenue for me. Another type of acquisition is I'm buying revenue, right? Which is an income statement side of the equation, right? I'm putting more income into the business.
Yep.
Right. Right. And so if we go back a few months, we think about acquisitions. There was an example of a very interesting example of essentially a revenue acquisition, which was when Deal acquired the assets of the global payroll assets of one of the traditional payroll vendors. What they're doing there is that they're not really buying product. It's an old product and essentially a service business. What they're doing is they're buying the revenue. And the idea is that they get this income in and they then buy and then they then over time convert the income stream onto the new tech. But the beautiful
Thomas, I
thing
just have
about
to
that,
interrupt you for I have to interrupt you for a second. When they buy revenue, that doesn't mean they don't care about the customers.
yeah,
They're
you know,
they're buying the customers
they're
also,
buying
and the
the
custom.
customer, but the reflection is on the revenue. And let me explain how
Yes.
it works. I need to explain how this works financially, so you kind of get the picture. So let's take an example of deal. Deal's valued at 15 times 15 times revenue, right? Right. And you have a traditional payroll service provider. If you're lucky, it's valued at 1.5 times revenue.
Yeah.
Right. So you're valued at 16, and let's say you've got 800 million in the kit bag, and you buy something for let's just make up a random number. Let's say you buy something for, let's say it's got 50 million. I don't know what the revenue was, but let's assume for a moment that revenue is 50 million, and you buy it for 100 million. Suddenly your revenue, your revenue has gone up by 50, but then it's multiplied by 16 because of your valuation. So it makes a whole lot of sense financially, from a financial point of view, for fast growing companies to acquire slower growing companies with big customer bases, in the hope that they can then move them onto their new check and drive more margin, etc., out of that. So it's quicker for them to and then convert them onto their platform than it is to go and seek out customers one by one. So that's the example of the deal acquisition, which I thought was pretty smart. There's a limit to those, what you can do, because eventually if you do too many of those, then you start to dilute the picture. Okay.
And just really quickly, Thomas, when you're a customer of a company that's been acquired like this, it does mean something different in each situation, right? There's not like a rule of thumb, whether it's a balance sheet or an income statement acquisition, how the customer is going to be treated necessarily.
Well, yes, depends. No one buys a company with the idea that, oh, I'm gonna buy this company, and I'm gonna make the customers really unhappy, and that's rare. I mean, sometimes occasionally you might buy something to kill it off. That's very rare that someone will actually buy something and say, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely kill this off and not give the customers any path to something else or whatever. That's
Yep.
super unusual, right? But the driver is, am I buying the tech,
Yep.
right? So the asset, the asset, or am I buying an income stream, which is the customer, right? So it's a way to think about it two ways. So if you look for instance at Workday, they bought a company the other day, Flowwise, which that's a balance sheet acquisition. They're buying it.
Everyone thought you were about to say paradox,
No, we'll
which
come
we'll
to
get to in a
Paradox.
second.
The
Yeah.
Paradox and Smart Recruiter is a little bit more complicated, but they bought Flowwise, which is some smart AI agentic orchestration technology.
Basically a new tool to help them, right? For the
Precisely.
toolkit.
Precisely. So, and you see this a lot. I mean, Google do this a lot. ServiceNow do this a lot. ServiceNow are very, very good at this. They're very good at buying promising tech, and then taking that tech and then molding it into their platform. They become
And I
very
think
good.
one of the biggest there would be like MoveWorks, right? As an
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, they
MoveWorks,
pay a lot of money for those tools, but at
sure.
the same time, yeah.
Yeah, but also the way that I'm sorry, jumping around a bit here, but I'm giving you my sort of full process about acquisition so you understand it. And I'm going to give you a horrible sporting metaphor for a moment. Um, um, when if you think about like companies as they start out and as they grow over time, when a company starts, once they've got going and they've got some market fit or whatever, they generally have their challenge is scaling the sales force, right? Because they have this product which is like hitting the market and it's really good, and their challenge when they're early on days is to have go to market and salespeople that can reach the market, right? So at a Series A company or a Series B company, that's a real problem. Is like, I've got this great thing, everyone wants it, but how do I actually get it? How to get it to the customer? How do I actually like get in front of enough customers to
Yeah,
sell it?
distribution,
Yeah.
basically.
And so with a startup, that's your problem. Is that once you've got the idea, it's a problem of distribution, right? That's what gets you to your next level of success. But if you look at big software companies like SAP or Workday or outside of the HR tech space, you take the Oracles and these companies. What they have is they have built over decades fantastic Salesforce machines, right? So they have a great, they think about it as that they've got this this big path to the customer. They've got this big path to this customer. So, but what they need is thinking the golfing metaphor here. I want you to think about a set of golf clubs, right? You play golf, you have 14 golf clubs. Right, right. Yeah, when you're a startup, you really have one of those little kiddie bags, right? With just 3 or 4 clubs. As you get further, you've got this opportunity to have 14 clubs, right? So the SAPs and the Workdays and the ServiceNows and all these companies with really good sales forces, they need more stuff in their kit bag, right, than their own engineering function can provide, right? Because they've got these really powerful sales machines. So all things being equal, the longer sales machine is operating, the more effective it becomes. Whereas with software has more of an aging problem, right? So it's easier to, once you've got your sales training right and all the rest of it, customer relationships and so on, you can replace salespeople relatively easily and still keep the infrastructure. Whereas with the product, you've got this technical asset which ages faster than a Salesforce ages,
Yep.
or is less fungible than a Salesforce. So what this means is that you get to an ideal point at some point where your engineering capacity and your sales capacity are aligned. And that's a beautiful place to be. But then what happens over time as you get older, your engineering productivity drops, right? Because your tech stack is older and
Yep.
and you got
And it
support.
takes more to maintain it.
Exactly. And your sales force is still building these long-term customer relationships. You've got this experience, you've got this brand, you've got this, and this is all building and building over time. So what you then do is say, oh, well, I've got to now put more stuff in my kit bag. So this is why people like to do acquisitions, is they can get a product to the sales force faster than by building it instinctively. And this is why you've seen the shift at Workday, right? So if you go back 10 years ago, Workday was all about, we are end to end, we build it all ourselves. We we don't do any, they did
Right.
a
I mean,
few
some of us
acquisitions.
had tattoos, even though I never worked there, but my wife did. The power of one tattoo,
Power of
right?
one.
Right.
Power of one, yes. But I mean, of course, they did some acquisitions, but those were fundamentally purely relatively small acquisitions that they did to boost their tech stack. So things like you go sort of way back, Cape Clear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They were building these small things, and eventually what happens is you start to do more and more acquisitions. The other problem this is a bit of a rant, but I think it's useful for customers your customers to think like this,
For
because
sure.
if you look at all the big vendors, what they came to you, they have what I call the buffet problem. So when they pitched you 15 years ago for Workday, they basically pitched you one price for like this end-to-end suite, right? So it's like, you're going to buy this thing from Workday. Yes, it's expensive, but you get recruitment, you get HR, you get talent management, you get all this stuff for integrated platform, blah, blah, blah. But it was one price, right? That was the mess. That was the promise, right? One price. Now, so you paid, I don't know, let's make a number, $15.99 for the all-you-can-eat Workday buffet, right? And so that was great. But then, so you got the buffet there, and you got you got the 2 cereals and the bacon and the whatever, and then you got a couple of ice creams. But now, you want something else on this buffet. You want some lobster on the buffet, right? And so Workday's thinking, okay, we're going to add lobster to the buffet. But you're saying, well, I paid $15.99 for the buffet already, and for your buffet to be competitive, you really need to be adding lobster and more different types of ice cream and whatever to the buffet. But I'm still only paying $15.99 for the buffet.
Right. It's all you care to eat, and whatever they bring out, it's part of that price,
Yeah.
right?
But then you look at it and you say, well, hang on a minute, over there, there's another, over there, there's other buffets, and they've got more stuff on. So your challenge for something like a Workday was like, I'm coming along now, and I've got, let's imagine, I'm being a bit facetious here, but I've got like chocolate ice cream. I've got this chocolate sauce, the ice cream, right? Which is let's imagine for a moment, it's I don't know, a CRM, candidate relationship management. So in the big scheme of things, candidate relationship management is like chocolate sauce on the recruitment ice cream. So you've been paying $15.99 for the whole buffet. So now they come along and they say, well, we want to charge you for the chocolate sauce. And So what can they charge you for the chocolate sauce? Well, it becomes quite fraught, because if they charge you 25 cents for the chocolate sauce, it's nickel and diming you, right? Right. And you get upset that, well, that should just be part of the buffet. So this is why acquisitions are super interesting, because what they can do is they can come along and buy a chocolate sauce, come in and say, well, this is clearly a different business line, because it's a whole different business we bought, which is chocolate sauce. And so you've got your buffet. Yes, if you want your buffet, it's great. We love our buffet. But hey, we've got this extra thing called chocolate sauce, but you have to pay for it. So there's kind of like there's a pricing game that comes to play here, because all the sweet vendors are selling you a sweet. But when you buy a sweet, you want one price for a sweet. You don't want to be buying the little pieces. So this is why niche vendors are so successful, because it's really straightforward. Is if I want my chocolate sauce, I buy chocolate sauce. So for something like Workday, it's easier for them to acquire a chocolate sauce company and add that to the price list than it is for them to make their own chocolate sauce. But if they make their own chocolate sauce, you assume that's going to be part of the buffet.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So there's this licensing problem, there's this pricing problem. So what the big vendors are challenged with is if they're going to build anything new and price it, it has to be really big and revolutionary and life-changing, in order that their customers will be willingly prepared to pay for it. And that's hard to do when your main day job is to maintain the buffet. Right. So this is why you get to a point where for these vendors, and it happened with SAP 15 years ago, and it's happening Workday today, is that what they need to do is they need to do two things. They want to have 14, mixing my metaphors here, but they want to have 14 clubs in the bag, right, to play the golf, right, and to play the game effectively against the other guys who also got 14 clubs in the bag, right. And so there's a couple of ways they can do it. They can build the clubs themselves, right. They can acquire clubs, right? Or they can borrow somebody else's, right? Which we have a partner model. So, you look at SAP 15 years ago, they invented this thing called a Solex, which is a solution extension, which is essentially someone else's software, which goes on your price list, right? Because what you do is you've got this mighty sales force, right? You've got this aging product stack. So what you do is you add other people's products to the sales beast.
Yeah.
Right. And that's now ironically, that's the point that Workday's at, is that this is why they're opening up their architecture and their sales kit bag, is that they reached the point now where the capacity of the sales force outperforms the capacity of their own engineering. So therefore you add in partners, and you add in acquisitions.
Yeah. So if we take those and tie those back to Smart Recruiters and Paradox, for example, they're adding new things that they can sell basically through that distribution channel.
Correct. And there's elements to this that are interesting, because Paradox, let's do Smart Recruiters first. By way of disclosure, we had a small stake, or we have a small stake. The deal's not closed yet. We have a small stake in Smart Recruiters. So we invested in a company called JobPal way back when, and JobPal was then acquired by Smart Recruiters. So we have a small position in Smart Recruiters. Good. If I look at the world of large enterprise in particular, Smart Recruiters is the market leader in large enterprise. They're probably the only standalone separate ATS or recruitment talent acquisition, whatever you call it, vendor that has good global.
Which, by the way, I mean, without getting too far onto a tangent, which clearly people can see, you and I could do this for hours. If you think about, thank you, Jerome, and thank you, Rebecca, for everything that you've done to do that, because I mean, Jerome and Rebecca did that on their shoulders, basically, to build a world-class ATS.
They are, yeah. And I think Rebecca is actually one of the best leaders in HR tech. I think she's fantastic. And so, Success Factors are doing SAP are doing a couple of things there. And this pains me to say it, because I'm partly responsible, or at least I ran for a little while. The recruitment product at Success Factors was not the shining light on the buffet, right? It was kind of the little bit of the soggy lettuce in the portfolio. So buying Smart Recruiters does a couple of things for SAP. One, a couple of the very large SAP SuccessFactors shops are running Smart Recruiters. Right, people like Bosch, for instance, they run Employee Central and all the rest of the SuccessFactors stack, but they're running they're running smart recruiters for recruitment. So bringing in, for companies like that, they really like this because it brings. I haven't spoken to Bosch about this, but this, their procurement, they now like this because now it brings it back into that one umbrella thing, which is super nice for them. They know that they're going to get it on the SAP service terms. They're going to get through the SAP support mechanisms, and there'll be a lot of big enterprises that are SAP shops that will appreciate this. So it's kind of smart from a whole bunch of other reasons. Also, smart recruiters have done quite a lot of work on the AI side, and so it injects additional AI competence and product into the success factors portfolio, which is a good thing. So yeah, it's a
And
super smart.
Thomas, you may not know the answer to this, but in that specific case, am I just bringing out a new rack of beef for the buffet, where all of those SAP customers are just going to be able to come back to the buffet and get some new beef, or are they going to have to upgrade their buffet price in order to get the
I
new
think
beef?
nothing's going to be for free, right? Because nothing's going to be for free here, but you know, in the big scheme of things, there is a sort of income statement side to this equation, and that there will be additional revenue coming through this product because it's quite it's a meaningful product from a revenue perspective.
Yep.
So it's a relatively meaningful perspective. It's basically meaningful in the scope of the HR tech spend, but it's not meaningful or material in the scope of SAP's overall revenue. You've always got to look at these big companies like SAP. You got to look at this in the context of not just the success factors portfolio, but the overall portfolios.
Well, let's drive on to Paradox. Do you see Paradox in the same light?
Yeah, Paradox is quite similar. I'd say that where Workday, um, Workday need to SAP is strong in the whole manufacturing. If you look beyond, beyond core, beyond just talking HR tech for a moment, SAP's strength historically has been in the world of manufacturing, right? Right. Workday is not particularly strong in the world of manufacturing. It's strong in service industries is where Workday has its strength, and Paradox is essentially a frontline worker play. So it's very strong in retail and such like places. So that plays very well, to strengthening Workday. Workday there. It also injects AI AI capabilities into Workday too. So they're the acquisitions are quite similar. I'd say that the smart recruiters is a little bit further down the stack. So it's a more fundamental acquisition because it's adding more like core transactional capabilities to the success factors story, whereas the Paradox is more of an add-on, add-on capability. But yeah, both. I think what I'd say is they're both sensible, prudent acquisitions. The valuations are, I know details, but I can't talk about them. But the valuations are reasonable. These were not ridiculous. These were not ridiculously priced acquisitions, and they'll be smart additions to the kit bag, right? So you're adding a new wedge into the golf bag here. And they're both smart, sensible acquisitions. That neither of them are revolutionary, game-changing, heralding the end of anything. They're just sensible, straightforward acquisitions. Larger companies buying smaller companies.
And I think that was the conversation that we were having. If you look at the forward-looking statements by organizations like Workday, like SuccessFactors, like we'll add Salesforce into the mix because they're different than Oracle. Oracle has a huge tech stack, and it kind of makes them a different player
Yeah.
because of this. But from an application standpoint, we're seeing a quite downward trend when it comes to people buying those big platforms, and it kind of gets us into this next
Well,
question.
the larger end, the challenge with the Fortune 1000 is there's only 1,000 of the Fortune 1000, right?
There's only so much land. That's what I always say. There's only so much land. Yeah.
Yes, precisely. So So, it's more now. It's like it's like, can we grow your size and the share of the wallet in existing customers rather than we're winning a whole bunch of new, whole bunch.
Yeah, and that's for me, it goes back instead of building a new land, I'm building up, because I have
Oh,
no
that's a good way.
right.
Very much a good way of. Yeah, it's very much a good way of. Yeah, a good way of thinking about thinking about these, and they will add. Yeah, and strengthens. In the HR context, both of them they will, strengthen their overall, their overall, the overall portfolio. But it's not a departure in strategy. It's things that they've been doing, doing all along. I mean, they generally what happens with acquisitions, people take a pause. Yeah, every now and again they take a pause, right, and then they'll start again. So, with SAP, for instance, they maybe paused on acquisitions in the HR space for a while, but they were doing them elsewhere, right?
Yep.
In other parts of the stack. And, look at SAP acquired LeanIX, Signavio, WalkMe, and so on. So they were quite busy from an acquisition point of view in other parts of the SAP stack, and now they're sort of refocusing on the on the HR side. So I think it's a super smart, but I don't think it's like some like evil genius awesome plan here. It's just like what any rational business would do. So
So
the point here is like it's not a like
yeah.
I don't like it when people do, every acquisition is somehow called game changing and revolutionary, and these are neither game changing nor revolutionary. They're just normal business.
So let's all of a sudden, the guy comes walking up to the buffet and starts sprinkling some AI dust on everything, which seems to be I'll keep going backwards in that analogy, the world we're in today. Do you see that all of a sudden, all of these organizations, these bigger vendors are going to be able to sprinkle some AI dust on them, and all of a sudden everything becomes revolutionary? Or do you see that, guys, the way that we're going to get to what's next is not AI dust, but, we're going to have to knock down the house that we've been building up
Yeah.
and start over again?
So, I think about this a lot, right? And so, if you think about revolutions outside of marketing brochures and what we talk about, revolutions are like, if we look here, I look for my Marx and my Hegel and my Schopenhauer and my history and all the rest of the history of French Revolution. All the revolutions normally involve like some violence and a change of incumbent. Right. That's if you think about definition of it's a
Yeah, yeah,
violent
yeah. No, it's a
overthrow of
good
the
way to look at it. Yeah.
that's a revolution, right? So you had Louis the 16th, and one day he was there, and then the next day he wasn't there, and a few weeks later he didn't have a head. Right. That's a revolution. Right. So we're not in a revolution in HR tech, but if you look at market shares, if you look at all those things, it's essentially the same half a dozen players that are a big deal, whether it's SAP, Workday, and then you've got, Dayforce, 14, 14 billion for Dayforce, you know, you know, it's more than 10 times either of the other two acquisitions, but, everyone's talking about what SAP and Workday are buying, but, Dayforce going public I think is a more significant move, more significant than either of those other two.
You mean going private?
Yeah, going private, and the other, well, being acquired. If you're acquired, if you go private, there's an acquisition. So if you think
Yes.
about it, like Paradox and Smart Recruiters, they were already private, but they just became owned privately by somebody else.
Yep.
So, but Thoma Bravo, opened up the old checkbook and took out 14 billion and bought
So what do you where so I know this is kind of a little of course off plan, but do you think that there's one path that's better than the other? Or do you think that these are just like, do you think that all of a sudden Dayforce is positioned to become the next darling in the space because of this? Or is it, are they just different financing paths or different growth
different,
paths? Or
largely different financing paths. So we probably, it's Yeah, I think UKG will go public at some point, so that's kind of almost like the other way around. If you always think, I was often used to compare UKG and Dayforce, and one's going private, the other one's going public. So they're essentially just like the advantages and disadvantages of the financing model. I think Tom Bravo believes that the market undervalues Dayforce,
Okay.
and I agree with them. I think Dayforce is largely undervalued and undermarketed. I think there's actually quite a lot of power and goodness in Dayforce that the market didn't recognize.
So if we look 5 years from now, Oracle, SuccessFactors, Workday, Dayforce, are they UKG, ADP? Are they still relevant?
Yeah, I think they will be still relevant. They might be less relevant, right? Right, and it may differ as to who does well and who doesn't well. And there will be a couple of new players added to the,
Yeah, and
add.
I know those guys aren't all the same. I didn't mean to bucket them. They're
So we
very
can
different.
I think one that's super interesting at the moment is Deal, right? Deal, High Bob, a couple of others that are, bubbling up to be significant, significant players.
And do you think those guys can compete? I mean, in the space today? I mean, do you think the market's ready for something different?
Well, there's 2 points to that: is that can they compete, and can they compete is one question, and is the market ready for something different is another question. Because that implies that you think those are different, and I'm not sure that they are that different. So
No, you're
yeah,
right. You're right. You're right.
yeah, yeah. So the point was a fucking long way. Sorry, excuse my French. Long way of getting to the point, but we haven't seen a, a a revolution in the way work needs to be done yet. So the revolution in HR tech will come when the way we did work in the past or today becomes obsolete, and therefore the technology supporting how work was done in the past becomes obsolete, right? And those technologies can't move fast enough to adapt to the new way of work. So what we
So
have,
do you think AI is that? Do you think AI is that lever that's going to change that?
yes, I do, but I think about it. I don't think it's as simple as the tech bros believe it to be, right? Because human beings are complicated and so on. So I look back to, we go back a century or so, and we had, well, a bit longer than that, but we had the really the invention of the production line, right? And of manufacturing, basically. And so we took artisanal work and we changed it into something new. We changed it into manufacturing, and that fundamentally changed the way we organized work, right? And essentially that's where HR was born out of that. What we would call HR today was born out of that process. So the rethink of the work that you know we had with Taylor and all these people, the
Right.
early processes. I mean,
That's Donald Taylor. Donald Taylor, for those of you scoring at home.
Taylorism is the thing you'll probably heard about. Taylorism and the work that was done at DuPont, for instance, in the DuPont analysis, and all those and later stuff like Hawthorne and all the rest of it in terms of how we designed work. So there were people that were figuring out how the hell do we design work, and they came up with the ideas of a production line, and they were measuring like how long does it take to do the whatever. So one theory is that work is AI will bring massive changes to how we do work. And there's evidence that this is correct. AI will, quite as yet, but it will massively change how we compose, decompose, and produce work and produce output. And we're unsure about what that is. So the systems to support that will likely be quite different from the systems that support work today.
Yep.
So what I mean is that we, you could, for instance, build a better HR system today, right? You get some smart people together, put them in the room, and you could use new tooling and new UI techniques and voice and blah, 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 blah. And you could build a better workday. But if work's still roughly the same, it would be a long grinding churn to churn Workday over, right? Right. So I don't think the answer is, oh, we'll build a slightly better Workday with a better UI and
Right.
better APIs and better whatever, and using fucking vibe coding or whatever, and we'll build this like new Workday faster, better than Workday, but it'll be just kind of like Workday, but just better. I don't think that's enough to displace Workday or SAP or whatever, just because these systems are just so embedded in organizations. But
I think that's so well said. I think that's so well
work
said.
changes so much that concepts of like job are no longer relevant, and
Right.
organizational structures and reporting lines are different, and so on. Then we'll need radically different back office systems. And if we need radically different back office systems, then I don't think they will come from the incumbents. I think they will come from somewhere else.
Right. If one was in marketing today, they could say we're on the brink of redesigning work and having a new work model, and all of our systems don't support it today. That would be like a massive statement.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be completely true because
The problem is work still has to be done today.
right, exactly. Yes, yes,
If you
exactly.
don't say, okay, well, hey, tomorrow AI is going to do everything, so therefore I'm not going to pay you today because tomorrow AI is going to do everything, right? Right. It's so this is the problem we are in the moment. We're in this interregnum between, like, there's this new world, right? So that there are skirmishes at the edge of the empire. So it's not settled, but we're not in a revolution yet. There's some skirmishes around the edges. So there's some skirmishes in recruitment, right? There's some skirmishes in learning, right? And there are all these agents floating around, causing trouble, but there's no like underlying revolution yet. There may well be one, but it's not here yet.
So how so Yeah, no, I love. It's kind of funny all the different analogies that we've used here and how they tie together. And clearly, as you can see, based on our time of this, we could do this. We could have a multi-part episode here. But the uh, the question for me is, will the old Revolutionary Guard, can they just change overnight to this new way of work, or basically, as that new way of work comes about, which I think it will, and once again, we don't know, but we think it will, or I think it will they be able to evolve? Will Oracle, Workday, SuccessFactors be able to evolve, or will customers actually say, you know what, we're actually breaking down things? Because those are very north-south approaches. Hey, let's buy an HR system,
Yeah,
instead of an east-west type of. Do you think that there'll be a new Revolutionary Guard per se that's out there?
I think it will take a long time, right, for things to change. So, it took a long time for on-prem systems to be replaced by cloud systems, right? It took a long time. And we have had an amazing consistency in HR tech. Players that were around in the, what is it, ADP 1947 are
Yep.
still like major player, right?
So do you
So
think we're kind of in a period of stasis where maybe people just wait and see what happens with work?
I think there's a lot of wait and see, because I mean, most people would love it if if they can stay running, if what they've got innovates. Most large corporates would be thrilled if the Workday, SAP, and whatever their systems innovate and flex and whatever. Those companies will continue to, this going back to the acquisition point. Those companies will make interesting acquisitions in the
Yeah.
hope that they will make them more more flexible to take on that journey. But it's going to get super interesting. But I've not yet seen what's the compelling reorganization of work that would demand a complete destruction of my HR tech stack.
We may have to do another episode when we're together at Unleash later this fall, because just this topic, we didn't get anywhere near deep as I wanted to. But I want to ask this question. Um, as someone who's built software, as someone who's tried to integrate software like yourself, like, what do you make of? I think I know the answer, but I have to ask it. Like, what do you think of the vibe coding world? Where do you think that organizations are going to get to the point where they're just going to spin up their own HR systems, and the world of vendors as we know them changes drastically? where they're more service providers than they are software providers.
We we've had this. So I think vibe coding is fascinating. I think it's super interesting.
I think I
Uh,
made you pause for a second, actually.
and there's a lots about vibe coding that I really really like. Um, but if we go back like historically, we've had you know vibe coding circa 1996 was people tools, right?
I knew you were gonna go there.
So the pitch of like 30 years ago was that, hey, you don't need your IT department anymore. You can build your own screens. Yeah. Um, and vibe coding is 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 a continuum of that, you know, of that, of that journey. And I think that you know, yeah, vibe coding is a bit like making movies, right? So the process of making a movie is changing thing, but there aren't that many people that can make good movies. And I think that's what we find with a lot of the stuff is like, yes, I could vibe code this, but there are people that would be better at doing it than me. So, as an HR leader, I'm like, do I really want to spend my time, does an HR person really want to spend their time vibe coding? Um, um, is it, and then the challenge with code is it's a bit like building a nuclear power station, right? So like I is building it, but then you've got to run the thing, right?
Yep.
And so this is the challenge I think with a lot of the vibe coding stuff at the moment is that it's great to build it and great for prototyping, but you know to run to build something and then have it run for years in production and be safe and secure and data protection and EO regulations or whatever, I think is a big step forward. So what I think it does is it makes software companies. So I think software companies will do a better job of vibe coding than HR departments will do.
Hmm.
So what this will mean is you'll just get better products from vendors and they'll be using new
Yep.
forms of software engineering to build those products. Now, I don't think you will be building them I don't think you will be building them yourself. I think it'll be a new way of raising the bar. And I think a few organizations will be very good at this and they will use these technologies and it will push things forward and so on. But I think most organizations will still will largely buy will largely buy will largely buy software. And I don't
From
think
software.
that
Maybe going back to the analogy you used, it might be part of the skirmishes at the edges, right? Where someone might need a survey tool and they may not buy it from a big vendor. They may build it themselves type thing.
they will build a lot of things around the edges. So what it means is that niche vendors, that what it does is it challenges the the niche vendor of 10 years ago that's doing 10 million ARR and has a relatively simple, straightforward SaaS product, that is essentially a relational database with a few screens in front of it. Those those companies will be challenged unless they can really step up. So the disruption is so where the disruption comes, maybe this is a good way to finish off today, is that the big guys are going to be fine. They got the money to buy small things, to acquire. They're super sticky. They're reliable. They're generally trustworthy. And so those are going to hang around, your
Yep.
big guys. There will be a lot of really exciting newcomers, right? Because they get stupid money from people like me to build new,
I was
new
gonna say those are the
technology.
ones. Those are the ones that you're looking for, and
Those are the ones I'm looking for. They're going to
we'll
build
put your contact info in in the show notes, right?
precisely. The ones that are challenged are like, the niche vendors of 10, 15 years ago that filled a gap in the Workday SAP portfolio, right? With a better, I don't know, candidate relationship management or EXP or whatever. There's layering.
Whatever the buzzwords du jour were,
The
right?
buzzwords du jour were the revolutionary, game changing every second Thursday from 10 years ago. Those are the guys who are going to get squashed because they have the technical debt and the customer, they have the chains of the existing product, but they don't have the valuations to go out and raise money from people like me. They don't have the growth to raise money from people like me. And so we're going to give our money to the unencumbered new kids on the block.
Yeah.
And the big guys, they've got a war chest to acquire, to do those balance sheets acquisitions that I mentioned earlier. So they can buy the company with 10 employees that's doing some really interesting stuff. They can just they'll just absorb those. It's the people, it's the products in the middle, that solved a 15-year-old problem quite well and have done okay, but don't have deep war chests, and don't have significant differentiation. Those are the ones who are going to get, that's where the roadkill's coming.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Hey, Thomas, I want to end on a human note, if I could.
Sure.
So, you get to see a lot of things that most of us don't get to see because you have founders or ideas even coming to you. And, I think I've been so blessed, and I think we putting you in this category, the Corsellos, myself, you, Hollandcheck,
Yeah.
Gretchen Alarcon, Yvette Cameron, like I could go on a list, Melanie Luget, I could go on a list of like amazing people, but there's no fountain of youth for all of us.
Yeah.
And, we're all getting up there in age. I mean, I'll even take, the analysts of the space, the Josh Bursons and the Brian Summers and the things like that. Do you see the next generation of leaders out there? And I'm not saying that we're better than any of them by any, are you seeing that next generation out there today that's going to be able to drive that revolution?
Oh yeah. 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 I don't see it in the analyst world, right? But I see it in the product. I see it in the product world. You know, I see like amazing founders in their 20s with 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 ambition, with EQ galore, with drive, with determination, with and um a desire to learn from history, but not to repeat it. I meet those people. I see those. I see those people.
I mean, I can just think of a few in your portfolio, whether it be the Charlie Franklins or whether it be the Michael Loffys or whether it be the Tech Wolf guys, I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I mean, there's a few of them in there that I'm like, wow, this is the future.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the future of this. I worry a little bit about the analyst community. I think that we haven't really had the injection of new of there's a whole probably a whole world of discussion about the analyst model, but the in Venderland, I think I'm so excited about the people that are coming into coming into HR tech with fresh ideas. I met one a while ago. Yeah, I know these guys. They're not an Acadian company, unfortunately, but I met this guy, and he came from another industry, and he said, "Well, what I did is I had this problem, so I thought it was a problem, but I went to interviewed 150 HR directors." Yeah, and sorry, you did what? I went and interviewed 150 HR directors to find out whether this was really a problem. I'm like, oh, okay. And yeah, and this youthful desire to learn, to bash down doors, to it's fantastic to work with founders, and not all young people, but this idea that often we think that things can't be done because they couldn't be done in the past or whatever, and I feel very excited about the new generation of people in HR tech, and they're concerned about things of privacy, and they're concerned about things like removing bias from AI. And so I feel very excited about the young people, the next generation of people building software. And I'm in awe of many of these people. I think back to what I was like at 28 or whatever, and I compare myself to, say, Andreas at Tech Wolf, and I'm just in awe of where these people are. People like maybe you mentioned Charlie Franklin from thing, or I just Claire McTaggart at Square Peg, and I see these people, and I think they're driven, they're deep technical chops, and deep empathy for work and for what HR may become.
Yeah, I'd like to call it out, Thomas, because I mean, you and I had this conversation, just yesterday on a side note, but I feel really good about that space. I feel really good about the future of the space. I do think there'll be revolutionaries that will revolutionize at the right time.
Yeah.
Back to what you said. So, for those listening who's like, "Oh, this space is a mess," which I've heard, by the way, a lot in the last 2 or 3 months. Like, I think we're just in a growing phase, but I
Yeah.
really think that the next guard is ready to help us.
It's, it's exciting because we're at a point where we've spoken about change with transformation, digital, blah blah, blah, but we're
Yep.
actually at a point now where where the rubber hits the road in terms of big of big changes of how work is how work is going to be done.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's scary, but it's exciting.
Yeah. For sure. Well, hey, we didn't even get anywhere near where I wanted to get to in our conversation, but I thought it was a great
We were
conversation.
when you sent me that email listing all these things you want to talk, I was like, yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know we'd be talking about the buffets and the golf clubs, and we definitely have the analogies to go through.
Yeah.
But let's do it again. This was really, really great. Thank you, Thomas, for being here, and thank you for everything you're doing for the industry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing and for this new podcast series. I'm looking forward to adding it to my Apple Music list.
To your playlist, and I know you're about to go biking today, so bike safely.
Yeah, I never listen to myself when I'm on the bike. That's one thing.
Take care. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah. Cheers.
That's a wrap on this episode of Now to Next. Time always goes so fast. I hope today's conversation sparked something new for you. An idea, a question, maybe a shift in how you see the road ahead. If you want to keep pushing from now to next, here's how we stay connected. Subscribe so you never miss the ideas shaping the future. Leave a review. Your feedback helps bring these conversations to even more future-minded leaders. Share this episode. Share with someone who's ready to create change alongside you. Join me beyond the mic. Follow me on Substack, a great resource. X at Jason Averbook, and LinkedIn, my name, Jason Averbook, for sneak peeks of upcoming guests as well as behind the scenes insights that I hope help you in your day and your life job. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't just watch the future happen. Step in, shape it, and lead it from now to next.